hotel room in Multan giving a presentation through Zoom to this conference. But thanks to Professor Asfak and his convincing that I should come back here this morning and talk to you. First of all, I want to give him tremendous credit for what he has done in Pakistan with respect to the development and implementation of computer models in agriculture. I think he's really the grandfather of DSAT in Pakistan, based on what I said yesterday in DSAT. And surrounded by him are his children and grandchildren, which are your great-grandchildren, which are the professors and the postdocs and the students. But I want to go back to the question posed yesterday about AI and models. And everybody faces right now the question about AI. And my answer was yesterday that AI right now will not take over crop modeling yet. And one of the reasons is that we really still lack data in agriculture and the agriculture beyond. I know there are people in here working in agriculture, also know that people working in social sciences, information technology, etc. So a lot of research still has to be done in this particular area in general. If I drove this morning again from Multan to DGK, I saw a lot of agricultural fields. And we need to again think about the challenges that the smallholder farmers face in Pakistan today and tomorrow. As I said in my presentation yesterday, most of us, or all of us, are being paid by the university or another organization, and you have a stable income. Farmers don't have a stable income. And this is not a pure agricultural university, but I think agriculture is a very important part. So in fact, we were discussing that a minute ago as well. Our role as agricultural scientists broadly, that also includes social sciences, technologies, and engineering, is first of all to conduct solid and sound research, meaning replicated experiments that are conducted over multiple years, with crops, with animals, human intervention, and publish those results in scientific papers. Maybe high-impact papers, or at least papers that are important and read in the international community. But I think we also have a role to play in taking that information and providing that information to our smallholder farmers, to our policymakers, and everybody else. And I think that basically differentiates us a little bit from other scientific disciplines. And that's a huge challenge. It's not just a challenge for Pakistan, it's the same challenge we face in the United States, and sometimes that's referred to as the last mile. So how can we take this information from even DSAT and then provide that to a smallholder farmer? For those of you who are participating in a DSAT workshop or run DSAT or any other model, farmers are never going to run those models, never. They're too busy. They don't know what to do with it, so it's our role to take that scientific information and make it useful and provide actionable information to the farmers, which is very, very challenging. And it requires really a transdisciplinary approach, where the social scientists, the anthropologists, the economists, IT, engineering work together with agricultural scientists and everybody else. I think there's still lots of opportunities in this area to move forward. Even with DSAT, I had one slide yesterday. We have been working on these crop models since the late 1980s. And there's many of you in the room who are younger than the age of DSAT. Because DSAT is at least 40 years old. It's not an insult. The question really is, what are we going to do in the next 40 years? is AI going to take us over, or is there still going to be scope for these types of technologies? I think at least for the next 10, 15 years, there's still scope for these technologies. So I don't think we should ignore AI. We need to be aware of it. But again, to really develop good AI systems with large language models, they rely on the data we as scientists obtain from our research. So with that said, I will be glad to answer any questions you might have. Please don't be shy. Yesterday was not much time except for one question.
Yes, please. Faculty, students.
You can translate in English.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Gerrit. I am Dr. Gerrit Hogenboom from University of Agriculture Festival from Forestry Department. And thank you for yesterday very nice talk and no doubt about DSAT and use of AI. So we are also working on, we don't have so much better facilities like US and China and other things like that, but we are trying our best. For example, in case of prediction and management of tree diseases, due to climate change in the last decade, especially in case of winter 24 or 23 was very severe winter in case of Pakistan. Some very important native trees which were seriously damaged. So my PhD work was also on in case of the Burgess dieback in Pakistan. So my students and some other colleagues are working on prediction and management of these diseases. So can these type of models like DSAT, just like you are working on different crops, so these can help in case of my field, in case of forestry. So what will be your suggestion and advice to me? Thank you.
Very good question. So the strong limitation even of the crop models within DSAT is that we focus on what we call annual crops, which is, one reason is because it's easy to collect data. And in fact, again, I need to commend the scientists here in Pakistan. You have really collected very good data sets to help advance these crop models. When we talk about trees, even within agriculture, fruit trees or agroforestry trees, it's a lot more challenging to collect good data, required to develop even these very detailed models we have in our cropping system. But I think there might still be scope to maybe develop, I wouldn't say simpler models, but really simpler models based on the data that you've collected. And one of the weaknesses, and that was at the end of my presentation yesterday as well, is that we have focused mainly on the abiotic stressors. So we've looked at droughts, we've looked at some of the flooding, high temperature, but the pests and diseases is very weak, I think, across everywhere, because you have multiple tree species with multiple crop species, and each of these species has its own unique pests and diseases, which is very challenging. And when we even talk about climate change, you might see new pests and new diseases which have never occurred in Pakistan. So that even becomes more challenging. And we see even migration currently across the globe in agricultural crops and in other crops as well. And that is very, very difficult to manage. So we might have to look at other solutions to address those challenges. And maybe AI could be a solution there.
Thank you.
I am Dr. Saptal Sen from Department of Agronomy. My question is very simple. Does DSAT model is helpful for the data which we will get from the abiotic stresses?
Yeah, so DSAT the focus has been, as I mentioned a minute ago, is on the abiotic stressors, but we are working right now.
For example, drought, salinity, waterlogging, temperature stress, light stress.
Yeah.
If we get the data from these kinds of stresses, DSAT model can helpful in elaborating or understanding or making the strategy from these kind of data.
Yes, yes, sir. I mean, again, I didn't have much time, but at least the models we've developed, in fact, I didn't even mention that yesterday, these are dynamic models, so these are not statistical models. So we simulate detailed soil water balance, or nitrogen balance, or carbon balance on what we call a daily time step. So we start our simulations prior to planting, we predict when emergence occurs, when flowering occurs, etc. So we can see exactly when a drought stress, flooding, a heat stress occurs with these models. And in some cases, internally in the models, we even use what we call hourly time steps. So every hour we calculate the process, so we can look at it. Yes, sir. So sorry that I misunderstood your question.
Thank you, Professor. We welcome you here. I have a question. You are focusing on abiotic stresses that you are observing through DSAT tool, or what I can say. My question is, can we explore biotic stresses as well by this methodology and this software?
Yeah, so at the end of my presentation yesterday, I showed some examples currently that we're trying. One of my colleagues, Professor Pavan at University of Florida, has developed what we call a generic disease model. Currently mainly focuses on wheat, but hopefully also we can move the same approach to rice. Because again, one of the challenges we really face with wheat, we have maybe 5 or 6 key diseases or 5 or 6 key pests. Rice, we have different diseases, different pests. And for those of you working in plant pathology or entomology, normally only focus on one pest for one crop. So the models don't necessarily exist to make the connection. So that's a huge challenge, but also then it's an opportunity.
Thank you so much.
You have a question, Karina? If you have any question, please raise your hand and you can ask the question. Yes, please ask. Introduce yourself and then you can go.
Thank you so much, Gerrit. We are really excited to have you here. I am basically a plant breeder, and as far as I can understand, crop modeling, like it's just based on calculation and mathematical equations. Being plant breeder, I have a question that how much the data can be reliable if you want to articulate like crop modeling, and then its practical translation into the plant breeding and genetics, and what can be the role of artificial intelligence. Like, is there any model that we can combine these 3 things, crop modeling, plant breeding, and artificial intelligence? How you can predict the future if you are having this kind of combination in any project?
Okay.
And other difficult questions.
No, that's an easy question. No, it's a very good question. So one of the challenges we face with these computer models is that we need to address the genetic diversity and the new varieties, cultivars and hybrids you produce on an annual basis.
Yes.
So although these models are developed, say, mainly in the United States and other countries, they are based on the underlying physiological processes. So we don't have a wheat model for the United States. We have a wheat model which can also be applied in Pakistan, can also be applied in Brazil, because we look at the underlying physiological processes. Having said that, we need to differentiate between the different varieties.
Yes.
So in our models, we have what we call cultivar coefficients or genetic coefficients that vary among the different cultivars. So we can define, you're familiar with growing degree days, so we can define the number of growing degree days to flowering, to grain fill, and to maturity. And they vary from cultivar to cultivar. So normally when a user, say in Pakistan, tries to work with DSAT, the first thing they need to do is identify these cultivar coefficients for local varieties based on experimental data. Which means that the model can be applied locally, but at the same time it's a challenge because you breeders release new varieties on a very irregular basis.
Yes.
So we are currently looking at trying to develop a linkage between like a GMAP and the crop models.
Yes.
So already 20 years ago I worked with a colleague at an international research center in Colombia where we developed a model called GeneGrow, which was for dry beans, where we used 7 critical genes that were identified for those cultivars as input into the crop model. We have now gone a little bit further, where we're also looking at QTLs, where we can take the QTLs from recombinant imprint lines and use that as input to the, for our cultivar coefficients. So we are really trying to see if we can establish a better link between biotechnologists and the breeding programs and the crop models. Because having said that, we can then use the models to create idiotypes. So using these same cultivar coefficients, we can create artificial varieties by modifying these numbers, like the growing degree days to flowering, and see how a hypothetical cultivar will respond to climate conditions in 2050. So then we can come up with, say, the best idiotype for a wheat variety that needs to be grown here in DGK. We can give that information back to you.
Thank you.
And then you can breed for that.
Yes.
Within quotes.
Hopefully.
But unfortunately, it's not a criticism. but normally when we look at breeding programs, most breeders are not interested in the underlying physiological processes of why we get more yield. What the breeders in general, I mean, I'm not criticizing you, they normally look at rankings, right? You go for the highest ranking, it's a new variety, and then you release them. And we with the models, we really want to look at the underlying physiological processes.
Actually, we breeders we mostly concentrate on practical things. Physiology and modeling for us, it's something like theoretical, you know, and we want to give practicals that is in the field to the farmer, that we can show something. That's why we focus on variety development. But we can make use of this, your knowledge like modeling and artificial intelligence. And I have one more question, that you know the climate change, everyone is saying climate change, climate change. So what can be the role of crop modeling or simulation in the, in ever changing climate? Like you design a model and in next season if the climate is something different. So how you will balance this fluctuation? Being a breeder, we can balance our traits. How we can balance your models?
Okay, another challenging question. So the challenge with climate change is that we really, in fact, even if we go from climate to weather, we can only get a good weather prediction maybe, and I'm not sure about Pakistan, but in the United States we can get a weather prediction that's accurate maybe 7 days out, right? So when we talk about climate change, we're talking about future climate or weather conditions in 2050 and beyond, right?
Yeah.
It's impossible to predict. So if you, for those of you familiar with the climate change report from the IPCC, they use not one climate model or GCM, they use 30 plus different models. And they then look at the uncertainty based on the outcomes of these models, because each model predicts a different future climate. So what we are doing, in fact, I showed it yesterday with the Acme project we had already more than 10 years ago. We take the outcomes of these climate models, we use that as input into our crop model, so we can then look at the potential impact, say potential impact, not actual impact, potential impact of climate change on wheat production in Punjab in 2050. And there's not one number, it's a number with a huge uncertainty associated with it. It's highly likely that that will show that yield will go down in 2050 because of the projected increase in temperature and the changes in rainfall. So then we can go back to the idiotypes I mentioned previously. We can say, okay, how can we offset the potential decrease in yield by looking at varieties that probably have to be heat tolerant, have to be drought resistant, or maybe have to be flooding resistant in the future. So we can come up with what we call adaptation scenarios where breeding plays a very critical role for 2050 and beyond.
We can keep them in
okay now.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir,
Yes, please.
I want to ask that do you bring any kind of scholarship or internship or something training program for our students?
Internship. Everybody wants to come to the United States. Unfortunately, I would say maybe you don't want to come today and tomorrow because we have a political situation that is not very friendly to international people. But I personally don't have much access to funding to provide you with an internship. But many of the people sitting here up front have benefited from HEC and ERSIP, which has been very generous in providing 6 months or 9 months scholarships to students like yourself to visit the United States or to visit any country, I think based on the ranking of the university. So I would encourage you to look for that type of funding because it also will pay for your travel to the country, insurance, and will provide you with stipends.
Training we have here today, we have arranged it.
Okay.
सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है, जब क्लाइमेट चेंज होता है तो वो फसलों को भी इफेक्ट करता है और उसके साथ साथ ह्यूमन हेल्थ को भी, हम क्या ऐसा कुछ करें कि वो दोनों को इफेक्ट ना करें?
She is asking that climate change is equally disturbing or impacting the agriculture and parallel with the human beings as well. How we have to, or what are the adaptation and how we can mitigate or adapt ourselves.
Oh man, sorry. I don't work in the field of
medical sciences,
health, so I don't really have an answer for you. It is a challenge, and in fact, talking about human health, the other part we really haven't talked about is livestock. I'm not sure how important livestock is, but I think livestock is very important here too. I mean, in my presentation, I solely focused on crops, but we also use crops to feed livestock, which is very important. But livestock can be also very susceptible to especially heat stress. So that is something we definitely should be aware of, and we need to look at it.
उन्होंने कहा है कि ह्यूमन हेल्थ पे तो मेरा काम नहीं है, लेकिन ये है कि लाइवस्टॉक जो आपके फार्म एनिमल हैं तो उन पे हीट स्ट्रेस का या क्लाइमेट चेंज का इम्पैक्ट ज़्यादा है. तो अगेन मतलब डॉक्टर ईश्वर चट्टा will further elaborate this question.
We have very clear, I have been talking to all of you that in DGK South Punjab especially, we don't have a crop agriculture much because being the brackish water and land degradation, very high temperatures, we are exerting on livestock. We are working on to develop the rangeland and pastures because we are not receiving rainfall like 150 millimeter rainfall only in this south part, and we are artificially providing the irrigation and developing a 600 acres, a new rangeland which will be a public entity and it will be free for all the grazers. So this will be the first, setup here, and after that we will replicate it. And Professor Gerrit, we have a very, very important livestock. This area's livestock is most important in Pakistan. Yeah. Any questions from students related to climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and what is the future of climate change, how we are suffering, how the floods they are hurting to DGK and South Punjab. Why are you monks? You should ask the question, and question from Swat Agriculture University. Anyone else?
Sir, I'm an economist, and how can I play my role in crop planning and climate behavior change?
She is from economics.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, I mean, economics is a very,
Economic
it's a very good
modeler
question again. Because we, as crop modelers, we mainly talk about yield, but economics is critical when we talk about the livelihoods of the farmers. So it's not necessarily all about yield, it's about income.
Okay.
So your role is to look at production cost, optimizing production cost, and basically maximizing the income of the farmers. So that, and then within DSAT, and I didn't really have much time to talk about it yesterday, we have a very brief and small economic component. But going back to the ECME project we had 10 years ago, the economists played a key role in our climate change assessment. So again, as I showed in one of my slides, we took the outcomes of 5 GCMs to look at climate uncertainty. We had 2 crop models, not only DSAT but also a model from Australia called APSIM. And that information then was used as input into an economic model called TOAMD to ultimately look at the risks, etc., associated with the livelihood. So there's definitely a role for you to play.
Any question from male side, male student?
Sir, there is one question, not a question actually. I want a recommendation from the Dr. Gerrit that, as you know, already our the Vice Chancellor explained that we are the center of the Pakistan. DGK is the center of Pakistan, and Indus River, which is the largest river of the Pakistan, passing near the DGK. Every year, flood hit the DGK areas, and so many population dislocated every year. What is your recommendation to the government? How can we use climate modeling for the improvement of this flooding, or we can mitigate or control the flooding? Recommendation needed only.
Yeah, I'm not a hydrologist, and I'm not a hydraulic engineer either. What I've seen in the news is the flooding can be really very bad for the entire system, resulting in fatalities. But one of the things I saw when we crossed the river is that there, in the past, has to be a natural flooding zone that allows the river to go outside its banks. If you, and I'm originally from the Netherlands, we have a lot of water in the Netherlands, and we have a lot of dikes. I mean, you can build a very huge dike along your river, but the problem then becomes downstream, people will be facing the same issues with flooding as well. So I'm afraid I don't have a solution. I mean, one of the things we need to consider is how you can actually capture that water from flooding into ponds, so it can then be used during the dry season for irrigation management. But one of the challenges I see is that, and I see it everywhere, is that people develop farms, communities in flood zones, where traditionally no one was living. So we need those flood zones for those rivers to basically slow down the water coming down.
Okay, please, next question.
Sir, my name is Mava and I am from Department of Chemistry. As we have read that for these challenges, they have developed green chemistry. But why these challenges are increasing day by day? These climate challenges are increasing day by day. Although they have do many things for these challenges, but why these challenges are increasing day by day?
What are the sources of climate change? Why this is going to change abruptly?
Intense.
Oh, right. Oh, vulnerable. We are vulnerable. Yeah. Again, although the chair here told you that's a question about climate change, I'm not a climate scientist. But one of and you observed that here, or you observed it in the United States as well, one of the results of climate change is that we see more weather extremes. So we see more intense rainfalls, resulting in flooding, and we see more intense droughts. In fact, on my travel from Gainesville, Florida, which is very tropical, I had to go through New York. They had extreme low temperatures in New York on Saturday and Sunday, even delaying my flight for a couple of hours because it was too cold. So it was -2 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what the results in Celsius, but it was very cold. So that is one of the outcomes of climate change. Is not only the climate in the future, but it's also the increase in variability. And it is not something we can necessarily prepare for. But again, when we're working with the smallholder farmers, they face that too. So your question, in fact, is very relevant. It's not only we need to look at future conditions in 2050, but you also need to look at current conditions and to see if we can develop management practices for farmers to make them more resilient to those extreme conditions.
Yes. Yeah, very good. This good. It was good question, and the same question was asked by the farmers. Why you are predicting like 2040, 2050? You know, we are facing the issues right now, and what are the adaptations right now? Yeah. So, you know, this was a very difficult question and to answer. Even in the AgMIP meetings and even with the farmers community, it was very difficult. The same thing is, you know, Gerrit is, they have the issues like uncertain, extreme events of climate change, very low temperature, very high temperature, storm, everything, and same we are having, especially in DGK.
I agree. Is when you talk to smallholder farmers, or maybe even your neighbor, they don't necessarily care about 2050 and the weather in 2050. Especially the farmers, they care about weather tomorrow and the day after tomorrow in the current growing season. So we need to be very much aware that we, as academicians, don't put ourselves in a bubble and ignore what's happening across next to our neighbors. So, so your question was very relevant.
Yeah.
My name is Dr. Muhammad Ali Khan from the Department of Botany. My question is about characterizing a genotype in crop model. Is you know that we use candidate genes like just make a sense of GWAS, but if we are using the multigenomic approach like genomics, transcriptomics, metagenomics, metatranscriptome, how you adjust these mechanistic models characterizing a genotype with the crop simulation?
Yeah, the picture is, again, going back to the earlier question, there's somewhat of a disconnect between what's happening in the breeding community and the biotechnology community. There's a lot of modeling and AI going on with breeding as well. But I think what that technology lacks is really looking at a true interaction between G by E by M. I think with all the omics, etc., you focus more on the underlying genetics and the genes and focus less on the processes. While with the crop modeling, we're trying to focus more on the underlying processes, but we would like to connect that more to the genes. So if we talk, for instance, about heat tolerance, and heat tolerance is still a very broad word, which process are we actually looking at, and which genes or QTLs or SNPs are related to that? Is it like to pollination? Is it to emergence? Is it to leaf expansion, etc.? These are all very, very detailed processes. So again, that's why we like to see a better connection between the omics world and what we do with crop models.
Might we have last question?
Well, sir, thank you for coming here. Hello, sir. Well, sir, thank you for coming here. As earlier our great Vice Chancellor said that the bond between you and him. So why do not open a branch of your DSSAT model here? And last thing I want to say that something Sreki, somebody अच्छे लग देता है. Thank you, sir.
looking gorgeous.
He is appreciating the efforts of Vice Chancellor and your good self to come here and looking very beautiful in local language.
Okay, thank you. So one other thing I do want to encourage the young scientists here in the room. So I know there's training going on the DSSAT models, which is great. But what we are really looking for is young people who are willing to go the next step and help us with the underlying technologies to further develop the models. We had questions earlier about pests and diseases, so we really need more models, not just data collection, for the development of pests and diseases. We also want to do a better job in linking the genetics to the crop simulation models. So anyone who is really interested in diving deep into the modeling approach, and I know for many people working in agriculture that is somewhat scary because you don't like mathematics, otherwise you would have been in engineering, but it will require some mathematical equations and data analytics. It was an honor to be here. Unfortunately, I'm flying back to the United States tonight due to the issue we had 2 days ago. But hopefully I will be invited by your Vice Chancellor another time to come back and spend more time with you.
Any other question, any other comment, especially from girls?
One question from me. I'm Dr. Gerrit Hoogenboom. Many of the biostresses are strongly correlated with biotic stresses. Sorry. I want to make a question. Many of the biotic stresses are strongly correlated with the abiotic stresses. So can this correlation be helpful in predicting or creating crop models for solution of these biotic stresses?
Okay, another challenging question. So traditionally, when we do research, even in agriculture, sorry for doing a step back, we just only look at drought stress and apply different levels of irrigation, or we look at nutrient stress and apply different levels of nutrient stress. But looking at the interactions is very important. And I think, again, this is where maybe modeling can also have an impact, because it's likely that a crop is going to be more susceptible to a pest or disease when it is under drought stress or when it is under heat stress. So we really, in our future research, we need to be aware that it's not just a single factor we're studying, but we need to look at the interaction of multiple factors, both biotic and abiotic.
Okay, thank you. You know, Gerrit, please have a seat. Once again, thank you very much for maintaining the